Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I am G and today I am going to show off all of the manga, comics and otherwise that I got for the month of November. There's end of the year coming up quick, quite a few books to get through, so rather than spend too long on this introduction, I'll get straight into it and I hope you guys enjoy. So first and foremost, I have a clear file that was the merchandise that I got for this month. This is for a newly airing series. I read the manga, have not yet gotten to the anime, but this is a clear file for Blue Period, a series that has very quickly become one that I highly enjoy, and I look forward to checking out the anime once it's finished. I know it's having a few production issues. It's getting delayed a couple of weeks, supposedly, so I will keep an eye out for it once it's done. Next, we have I guess fan art book is maybe the best phrase. It's not a doujin. This is a collected zine that I helped fund on Kickstarter, featuring various artists' pieces that feature warrior women of legend and myth. So I got the set of prints and art pieces, which is very, very cool. Some foil embossing on some of that. And then I also got the book itself, which is just absolutely gorgeous, featuring a whole series of fantastic art pieces from some incredible artists across the world. A lot of really interesting women, some of whom legendary women whom you may not have heard of, and because of that there is a really crucial list at the end specifying who is being drawn, what the story is, and for anyone interested in following the legend or myth that they are featured in. So it's a bit of an unusual edition. This is the sort of thing that I do tend to enjoy funding on Kickstarter. So when I found out about this one, I jumped on it and happy to have received it today. Speaking of Kickstarter, I have some other Kickstarter comics, or some Kickstarter comics that I actually got in the mail just today. Both of these were part of the funding goal for the Bulgarian Press, which I believe is a Canadian indie comics publisher. So today I received Threshold by Gladnick. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Gorgeous little glossy cover, beautiful printing job, some phenomenal use of textured paper. Really interested to dive into this one. And then also another really beautiful little book, Riso printed, and that is Faster by Jesse Lonergan. So these two are the debut comics from this small publisher, and I was really happy to pick them up. Looking forward to reading these two books. And additionally, there was also a Riso print that was included, which is pretty cool. Next was something else that I received today, and I guess this might tie into Kickstarter as well, because I do think that there was a previous Kickstarter for this title, but I have the mass publisher release the Del Rey release of Eisner-winning Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. This is an ongoing webtoon, or webcomic, however you want to classify that, on webtoon, which is a modern reimagining of the Persephone and Hades love story. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you are wanting to read it without buying the book, you should check out the the online version. It is available on webtoon in its entirety so far, and it's very, very good. For myself, who is a big fan of myth and legend and grew up with the Greek myths, then this was a no-brainer. I've enjoyed Lore Olympus for a long time, and when I heard it was getting a wider print release, I pre-ordered it immediately. So yeah, exciting. Fun and exciting. Next, for comics, and this is an interesting little book because it's comics and essays on Lolita fashion and cute culture. This was released by Koyama Press. I haven't read it in its entirety yet, but I look forward to doing so. But I namely became aware of this next thing because I follow one of the artists or comics creators that was featured in this book, Ann Nguyen, whom I've spoken about before on the channel, but under their other name that they publish comics under, which is Psycho Inc. Saikoink. I believe it's KO. But yes, this is So Pretty, Very Rotten. A collection of comics, as said, and essays about Gothic Lolita, the Lolita culture, how it's evolved over the last several decades, how different people interpret Lolita, and the history of the subculture in Japan as well as overseas too. It's really, really good and cute, and I look forward to reading more of it in the coming weeks. Next, we have an unusual release from J Novel Club, and this is the first official fan book for Ascendance of a Bookworm. I'll do anything to become a librarian. So this is a collection of art pieces, namely the illustrations that are included in each of the novels, as well as informational work. There are short stories set with these same characters, some character breakdowns and discussions, and some manga as well. So really fun little book. Interesting to see fan books being released in English once again. I believe there has been a couple from major Jump titles in the past having been released in English, but I don't quite remember which those are. Viz put them out many years ago, probably to not much great success. I think J Novel Club has a better idea of which of their titles and spin-off series will sell, and so Ascendance of a Bookworm would be, in my assumption, a no-brainer for them to do. Similarly, spin-off titles to very popular franchises like The Ancient Magus' Bride. They've seen light novels and fan books been released by Seven Seas. So there's definitely a market for them, but they're not as common as they are in Japan, obviously, but also not as common as I think there's potential to be, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's an interesting addition to a series, a light novel series at least, that I really love. I haven't read a huge amount of the manga. I have seen the anime, the first season at least. So yeah, first 2 seasons maybe I've seen. I haven't seen the most recent season. But Ascendance of a Bookworm is really good, and I highly recommend you try it in whichever iteration most interests you. So, onwards to the manga, we have a new debut, which is also a single volume release, one that I was personally highly anticipating, and one that, having read, I really, really fell in love with, and that is Boy Meets Maria by Peo, and released by Seven Seas. This is the debut title for the sadly late Peo, and is a real exploration in love, acceptance, gender expression, and finding people who accept you for who you are. It's quite complicated. I will also forewarn people that this book really deals with a lot of very heavy subjects, including sexual assault, rape, childhood rape, emotional abuse, just a lot of heavy, really heavy topics. It doesn't shy away from them, and it is a very crucial part of the story, so it can't be just casually skipped over either. But I will read the synopsis on the back so we get a better idea. Taiga dreams of becoming an actor, so the first thing he does upon entering high school is join the drama club. There, he meets the beautiful, enigmatic Maria and immediately falls in love with her. Not long after, Taiga is told that she is actually a boy. But is that all there is to Maria's story? The late Peo debuted with this beautifully illustrated single-volume tale exploring the nature of personal expression and the fluidity of the power of love. So, as the blurb explains, this is the story of Taiga, who grew up idolizing sort of the Kamen Rider-esque heroes on television. He's always wanted to be an actor, and most notably to portray a hero. And once he enters high school, he's very confident in himself. He has great energy. But once he enters high school, he comes to have to realize that he's not actually very good at acting. And early on, having started classes, he runs into this beautiful, beautiful girl on stage dancing and instantly falls in love with her. But as our blurb explained, Maria, as the student is called, is actually a boy, or at least assigned male at birth, right? And so a lot of the story is, despite having learnt that Maria is not this beautiful young teenage girl, he's actually this beautiful young teenage boy, and actually might not have a real idea of who he is or who they are because of their personal past. And so, but despite all of this, Taiga still is very much having fallen in love with this person, this unusual teen whom really sets himself apart. And so not only do we see Taiga and his life, his past, the reason why he is so attached to fictional heroes, the very rocky relationship he has with his father in the aftermath of his mother's death. We also have Maria, who portrays himself in one way, is more comfortable, or I wouldn't even say he's comfortable. I don't think he has a point in where he's comfortable. He hasn't ever had a spot to explore himself because of very, very just shocking, outright terrible abuse on several levels throughout his life. He was raised as a girl for a lot of his early childhood because of his mother's own mental illness and enforcing him to wear girls' clothes and act like a girl. And then also in childhood, following that up with being sexually abused by a teacher, which then feeds into him not feeling safe in either kind of presenting as a girl or presenting as a boy. He has never found or had acceptance from anyone in his life. And I'm going to use he, him pronouns, namely because that's sort of what he uses for himself. But as I said, he's not quite sure where he fits in. He hasn't had the opportunity to grow comfortable in any gender presentation, and so a lot of the story is him growing comfortable with how he presents himself, having found Taiga, who is so just unilaterally accepting, now having to face his trauma and having to face his fears of who he is and how people see him. It's really good. As I mentioned, there is a lot of really heavy topics, so it's not for the faint of heart. I do think that it utilizes those elements and those themes with a lot of care. It's not a perfect series, but I don't think any book or any story that handles a lot of these themes will ever be perfect. It's a very messy and emotional and hard situation in any situation, and there's no way that you can perfectly tell that story that everyone would find acceptable. I do think that there's a genuine care for these characters. I really enjoyed the character arc of all of the characters in this series, and it's really heartbreaking to have read this and know that this is, I believe, the only one of Peo's titles that was published before their death. And that's incredibly sad because this was an incredible debut. I do think there shows such an understanding of empathy in this book, and I would have loved to see this creator grow over the course of a much longer career, but unfortunately that cannot be the case. But I do recommend this book if these topics are something you can personally handle. I do think it's worth reading. I do think it's beautiful. It's got I didn't show the artwork, but it's got a really beautiful character design. This gorgeous, very expressive characters as well. It's beautiful. I love it. And it's got a stage theater element to it as well. if that's something that interests you. So try Boy Meets Maria. Next was a series that actually ended this month, and that is the 11th and final volume of Shilarun, The Girl from the Other Side by Nagabe. This is Nagabe's long-running, now completed, somewhat dark fantasy story about a how do I explain this series? About a young girl and her teacher, whom she lives with in the forest outside of society. He is this strange beast monster creature, much like a lot of the other people around them outside of society, but he has retained his sense of self, not necessarily his identity. He doesn't have his memories, but he is much more human than the other outsiders. And the series itself follows their lives together, their time, this larger prophecy as to which the little girl Shiva may be a larger part. And it's quite poignant, quite bittersweet, but beautiful, sad, breathtaking, really interesting. It does play a lot into European folklore. It feels very much like a fairy tale, and so I personally think that Nagabe really captured that element really, really beautifully. 11 is the final volume for the story of this, although, having read this volume, we will be getting an exciting volume 12 full of short stories and other additional things, I presume, for this series. Having read this volume, the Shilarun title also makes a lot more sense. For those who don't know, Shilarun is a Irish folk song, which you can look up. It's in both Gaelic and English. Different parts of the song are in different languages, and it makes more sense that it's involved, or it's a part of the series, having now finished reading it. I really enjoy Nagabe's work. I've very quickly become a fan since reading the series and reading some of their other titles, but I just love their character design, their monster design, their art style just generally, and I look forward to whatever new endeavor they start on, because I will most likely try it and probably fall in love with it. This particular book is not necessarily the happiest of endings. This series went in a direction that maybe some people were not happy about. I will clarify that it's not a romance. It doesn't do that, but it just doesn't evolve from the way that it starts, if that makes sense. A lot of the mysteries are answered. A lot of the story beats are very much there, and very much it all ties in together perfectly. But if you're wanting just the soft domesticity of the earliest volumes, I won't say this ending doesn't give you that, because it does, but overall the series has more going on than just a sweet, somewhat unusual slice of life. but I do really enjoy it. I'm happy to have completed it. I'm happy that it will be continuing in some small capacity. And yeah, I look forward to more of Nagabe's work. On to continuing manga, we have the most recent volume of Mob Psycho 100, Volume 7 by 1. This is the completed in Japanese, ongoing in English, comedy coming-of-age series about a middle school boy called Mob, called Shigeru, but called Mob, who has psychic powers. He has telekinesis and all sorts of various other fantastical powers that he kind of doesn't really know how to handle yet. He is the apprentice for a phony spiritualist called Reagan, and together the two of them solve people's problems, which is a part of it, definitely, but more so this is a story about Mob discovering who he is, having people accept him as he is, and growing up, making friends, meeting people, finding his place in his community. It's my favorite of One's work. You may also be familiar with One Punch Man, which is the webcomic, at least, is written and drawn by this creator. The manga adaptation is not done, like the art isn't done by One. This Mob Psycho is completely done by One, and I think that makes all the difference. I really love the comedic timing. It's so funny. It's so likable. The cast is phenomenal. Fantastic anime adaptations. We've recently had the announcement of the 3rd season, which will be the final, hopefully wrapping up all of the various story elements for Mob. It's just all around a great time. I highly encourage people to try it, especially if you have enjoyed the anime or if you've enjoyed One Punch Man. This, again, in my opinion, is the better of the two. It has, even at 16 volumes, it didn't outwear its welcome. It really captured the story that it wanted to tell, and perhaps it's a good thing that it never caught the same popularity that One Punch Man did when it was ongoing, because I feel like the huge explosion of popularity for One Punch Man is why it has gone on for so long. And I find that one note joke a little too one note. There's some spicy takes, but not there. I've never hidden my opinion on this. I think that Mob is not only the more likable protagonist, the more interesting cast, and the more genuine story, but also somewhat more relatable. Both stories are, they're about people with incredible powers outside of human capability, but I find that Mob's focus on community and connection and acceptance of yourself and finding acceptance from others and gaining confidence in yourself, perhaps a lot more relatable, or just more clear, more crystallized within the story, compared to One Punch Man, which does have a fantastic story or theme about hard work and human perseverance and achieving goals that you set for yourself and personal justice and making hard choices, even if they make your life harder, because they're overwhelmingly the greater good or the better idea, gets a little too lost in One Punch Man because of all of the other superhero shenanigans going around. And I just think that it gets bogged down by too much happening with characters that aren't contributing enough to the story, or the same things to the story that the mob cast does. But again, all in my biased opinion. Really happy to see this volume from Dark Horse. I'm looking forward to the next one. We are almost halfway through the manga, and although Dark Horse does have its faults, numerous, I'm really happy that it seems that they're being a lot more proactive on their manga this last couple years, and that we will, fingers crossed, never say never, but hopefully get the entirety of Mob Psycho 100. I don't think that Dark Horse will ever truly revert back to kind of their mid-2000s selves, wherein series were just kind of unceremoniously dropped and never returned to, namely Blood Blockade Battlefront, Drifters, MPD Psycho, etc. So if any series deserves to be bought and continued and enjoyed, it's Mob Psycho. And if you haven't tried it yet, please do. It's very fun, very funny, and kind of amazingly relatable, despite being about psychic powers. Next we have the volume that I needed for this series. I have the most recent volume, but this one has been out of print for a long time. I missed the first printing. I think it sold out in pre-orders for its first printing, so it didn't really make itself available to bookshelves till recently for anyone who did miss that first print run. And that is, of course, Chainsaw Man by Tatsuki Fujimoto. This is a 12-volume series, technically ongoing. There is a second part planned by Fujimoto about, it's a shonen action drama comedy from Shonen Jump. Personally, one of my favorite series from Jump the last several years, and perhaps ever. Chainsaw Man is just fantastically good comics, and I highly recommend it to any and everyone. I've very much grown into a Fujimoto fan over the last year and a half, 2 years. This is the story of a teenage boy called Denji, who kind of unceremoniously dies, but then forms a pact with his demon dog, Pochita, who has a chainsaw coming out of his snout, and in doing so, Denji becomes the demon known as Chainsaw Man. He doesn't come from a very good background. He's always done whatever it takes to survive. He's never been to school. He's never had any friends. He's never known who his parents are, really. But having now become Chainsaw Man, he joins the Public Security Division, which is it's sort of a law enforcement to protect people from demons, devils, whatever they may be called, who very regularly attack humans to great destruction. And so Denji as Chainsaw Man, along with various others in the security force are now tasked to fighting whatever demons or devils come their way or they're assigned to. We also have Power, the Blood Devil, who is, as her title she's just really into blood. She's fantastic, great character. And then, so she and Denji are technically partners, and then they are put under Aki, who is a more senior member of the security force, who becomes somewhat of their de facto guardian. And so the security force in general is chasing a devil called the Gun Devil, which causes mass destruction any and everywhere that it goes. So they are following that. But whilst this is happening, Denji is also just trying to be a 15-year-old boy. He doesn't have the highest goals. He doesn't have most of the high-level intelligence that it might take to understand when people aren't being genuine, when a situation doesn't seem natural or like a good situation, because of his background of doing literally whatever it takes to survive, to get through things. He is very easy to accept things at face value because of that. And his complicated emotions with having this newfound duty and new notoriety and, to a certain level, a small level, respect, having gained these powers, and also just being like, sometimes as a 15-year-old boy, I just like girls, right? I like the idea of boobs. They're great. He has very simple dreams. And something I've always really enjoyed about Fujimoto's work, and I've said this previously with Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man, is that all of his characters are not inherently morally upright, perfect people. Definitely not. But they're all vastly interesting, incredibly human, incredibly relatable characters who make choices that are innately understandable for people within those situations, and always done with a huge amount of nuance and care and understanding of the human condition. For those who keep count or who keep tally, Fujimoto has his previous work, Fire Punch, has also been released in English. I also own it. It was a series I got to a little bit late, namely because it's just, there's so many, it's really hard to recommend, as is Chainsaw Man, to a certain extent, or to a lesser extent than Fire Punch. Fujimoto's works are very in-your-face, somewhat of shock, gross-out humor, pushing every social stigma and moral boundary that he can, very upfront, like from the very get-go. There's a lot of really rough ideas or themes, lots of hyper violence, gratuitous violence, some real crass humor, just really, Fire Punch even more so. There's like bestiality and pedophilia and cannibalism and all sorts of things in both of his manga to greater and lesser extents. But I think there's a real reason or in execution as to how those elements are done, and I will say that it's somewhat of an how do I phrase this? It's somewhat of a reward if you can get through that initial shock, that initial setting the tone of things being the absolute worst, because both of the realities, both of the settings in Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man are just the worst. You would never want to live there. You would never want to exist within these realities. And I think that all of those elements of hyperviolence, of like vomiting on page, of, you know, sexual elements, in your face sexual elements, high crime rate, extreme violence, extreme cannibalism, incest, all, you know, abuse of all varieties, all of these things are very quick ways to set the tone, and from there, and also not only set the tone, but to allow the characters to very quickly emphasize where they sit within this very messed up structure and society, that from there Fujimoto then and we as an audience can then see how this character changes or grows or adapts to the new situation that is the scenario of the manga. I would never blanket statement say everyone should read Fujimoto's works. I will say that everyone should read Look Back, his 150 odd-ish page one-shot, which is available on Shonen Jump, the Jump app, which is not nearly as confronting and full of dark themes. It does have some dark elements to it. It's not like a sweet slice of life or you know, shoujo first love story. It is a Fujimoto work, but it is incredibly phenomenal and definitely worth the read, and I hope that we see that in print at some point from Viz. But I would recommend that Chainsaw Man, if you are wanting to try his works, Look Back would be your first port of call. Then Chainsaw Man, I think it's because it is a mainstream Jump title, it was in the magazine, that it's not nearly as confronting as Fire Punch. It doesn't push quite so many envelopes, but it's still very, very clearly Fujimoto's work. And then if you can handle that, then you may want to ease yourself into Fire Punch. And I will say that all of these, both of his long-running series, it may take a little while to figure out quite what the direction is for the stories, but I will say that he's really great at not being predictable. The stories develop in organic, but perhaps not conventionally fictional or conventional storytelling element ways. Normally you expect certain events to happen in succession in particular genres or particular stories. Fujimoto will have a lot of stuff going on, and you will expect something to happen because of expectations of the genre, but very often things don't go in the direction that you are expecting with his work, which is not a fault. It isn't inherently a positive. I think a lot of less experienced writers try to subvert expectations. That's almost become a meme, right? There's like, oh, it subverts expectations, but that doesn't mean that that's a good thing. If you don't know what you're doing, it very obviously makes your faults, your weaknesses in your writing, in your character study, all that more obvious. And so it's a testament that Chainsaw Man never has those. I won't say it's the perfect comic. Nothing ever is or will be, but it's pretty dang great. And I would also recommend it to people who like Dorohedoro, because they've got similar vibes. Alright, that's it. So we've reached the shoujo beat. The shoujo manga, shoujo beat releases from Viz. First up is, it took a long time for me to get a copy of this, namely because it wasn't, I don't think Australia technically has stock for this one in yet. I was able to get it from, in my normal comic store didn't have the volume, so I had to get this from another comic store which did have the volume in stock. So I finally got it, and this is volume 3 of Ray Toma's The King's Beast, the story of a young teenage girl who has infiltrated the palace and become a bodyguard for the 4th prince in order to find out what happened to her twin brother who died several years ago when he, as a child, her twin brother, when he became a bodyguard for this 4th prince at like 10 or 11 years old. It's been several years since, and this is set in Toma's universe from Dawn of the Arcana. So our main character, she is an Ajin. She has incredible strength, animal ears and things, but in order to infiltrate the palace, she has pretended to be a boy. So this is somewhat of a Mulan-esque story, maybe. It's very good. I really enjoy Dawn of the Arcana. I haven't read The Water Dragon's Bride yet. I do plan to at some point, but I've just absolutely fallen in love with The King's Beast. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous comic. The amount of just art improvement between this and Dawn of the Arcana is fantastic. I really like this setting, and I'm happy that she's returned to this. There's no real crossover with her previous work in this universe, but that doesn't matter. I like it. It's also quite standalone, so if you haven't read Dawn of the Arcana, I would say you could definitely still read this. I believe there's 7 or 8 volumes in Japanese currently. It's also ongoing. Dawn of the Arcana is 13 volumes. Water Dragon's Bride. I keep wanting to say Bride of the Water God, which is a different comic. The Water Dragon's Bride, I think, is like 10 or 11 volumes itself. So I expect this is probably aiming for that sort of length, between 10 and 12 volumes. Any longer, I'd be very surprised. But maybe not. Maybe Toma has a lot of ideas for this one. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, really wonderful. It was well worth the wait for me. Next, and continuing with the shoujo beat theme, we have Sarasa Akidoki's Snow White with the Red Hair. This is volume 16. And what can I say? This comic just continues to be fabulous. I love it so much. I love everything about it. It's really interesting reading this part of the story, wherein our 2 main characters, Zen and Shiroyuki, are living separately, doing their own thing, living their own lives, and facing their own challenges. And I think that's really wonderful, really brave of Akidoki. I feel like it's not inherently a weakness, but I feel like a lot of the time, a series that does have such a large romantic element between, or such a focus on a main couple, is somewhat afraid to separate them, and although may give them their own goals or things to do, their own storylines separately, they are always, the two characters who are in a romantic relationship are always usually within reach of each other. They see each other regularly. They're in very close contact. This, and or if they are separated, is for a predicted short period of time. This series, although the characters do communicate with each other, they do try to see each other as often as possible. They live in very different parts of the country right now. They're following very different goals and have much larger responsibilities outside of their personal lives, that even when they're able to be together, there's not a huge amount that they can do to help each other's situation outside of being a sounding board. And their separation is predicted to be, about 2 years worth, which is quite a long time, I think, for any relationship. But it's really interesting to see the characters have their own time and spend time with other people outside of their romantic interests, build their own lives and build their own reputation, maybe, outside of their relationship with their partner. It's really, really interesting. And Snow White with the Red Hair continues to be fantastic. This book is definitely not out in Australia widely yet. I was able to get it from my normal comic store, and I lucked out because I snuck in. They only had the one volume for 16, and I was like, yes. They had a couple of the previous volumes, but I already had those, so I didn't need them. So I bought it and was like, yay, I don't have to worry about buying from Amazon or anything, because it just takes so long. Oh, I wish we weren't three months behind the schedule of the rest of the world. Oh well. And of course, COVID certainly hasn't helped with any of that either. But highly recommend Snow White with the Red Hair, especially if you're wanting kind of a royalty or aristocracy setting, sort of, I don't want to say fantasy because it's not that, aside from like maybe low fantasy. There's no magic or anything. It's a European historical fiction. So yeah, I feel like if you enjoy something even like Yona of the Dawn, which is obviously much more inspired by Asian history, you would probably enjoy Snow White with the Red Hair. It's very good and full of likable characters who are doing very interesting things together and apart. And speaking of Yona, I also received volume 31 of Yona of the Dawn by Mizuho Kusanagi. This I was missing. I had 30 and 32 for a long time, but I don't know how I missed 31. Whether it was the fact that my an order was cancelled, or I just wasn't able to find it in stores. I normally have the series pre-ordered on a lot of places, so I don't know whether I didn't get one for Yona. I don't know. It's weird. And it just ended up that I got 32 before I received 31, which was very confusing at the time, but I have since amended that and had the opportunity to read both, which was really good. But oh no, I'm left on the biggest cliffhanger. Well, I mean, Yuna always ends on such a captivating point, and oh my goodness, things are happening. I really enjoy this. I'm really enjoying this part of the story wherein Yona and the dragons are getting more involved with or being reintroduced to the country, and having the opportunity to have or understand their relationship and the motivations behind Suwon and his leadership and the various things that he's put in place since the death of King Il. There's a lot going on. I'm really excited to continue reading. It's interesting to see how the story has developed. This is one of my favorite series being released right now. I say that about almost all of the series that I follow because it's true. I don't buy things that I don't enjoy. We know this. This is an established fact on the channel. But legitimately, I would recommend Yona of the Dawn to almost everyone. It's fantastic, captivating, just full of brilliant characters, great character relationships, beautiful art, fantastic action. It's a real political thriller, funny, fun, has a real emotional levity to it, great growth of characters. It's got everything. It's legitimately got everything. And if there was a series that I'm following right now that I would recommend to every single one of the people watching, regardless of who you are, what your typical reading habits are, if I had to blanket statement give a recommendation to everyone, it would be Yona of the Dawn. It's just that good. And at 32 volumes and counting, it continues to be fantastic, even better than it was, and I would read this series forever, really. It could go for as long as it wanted, as long as it needed, and I wouldn't care one bit, right? This is a series that I could follow for 100 volumes, and we know that I'm very particular about that sort of thing. I hate when a series outgrows or outwears its welcome. Yona, as of right now, there's never been a point that I haven't been wholly invested, wholly interested, entirely fixated and captivated by what Yona is doing, ever, which is a very, very solid achievement. But yeah, try it if you haven't, especially the manga. The anime is good, I won't deny that. It's also very much almost a prologue to what the story is, because in that we never have, aside from legitimately the last 5 minutes of the last episode, there is never a point in time in that show where all 4 of the 4 dragons are with Yona. So, maybe if you enjoyed the anime, try the manga. It's really good and worth your time. We have the large print titles. This is a vertical release. I guess technically it's Kodansha. I don't know what will happen if they change the branding on things. I don't know. We'll have to find out. But this is the most recent volume from my favorite mangaka, Fumi Yoshinaga's What Did You Eat Yesterday, volume 17. Yoshinaga's ongoing food manga about a gay couple in Tokyo who make food and enjoy it with each other and with the people in their lives, whether they be coworkers or friends or family or whoever, right? I've said this before, I'll say it every time that I get a new volume of Yoshinaga manga, but I love her work. She's my favorite creator. Everything that she's done, most everything that she's done, I've been a huge fan of. And even the stuff that I'm not as, like, in love with, I still really appreciate and do enjoy. I find even her lesser work is stronger than some other creators' poorer work, if that makes sense. Or best work, maybe. Her worst work is better than some creators' best work. That's what I'm trying to say. Keep it right, G. But this really is it's a recipe book. It straight up is a recipe book. And all of these recipes get broken down into exactness. She takes you through the preparation of all of these meals, and interspersed with this food and this cooking is the actual development of the day-to-day lives of these two people. It's great. It's not a series for everyone, but if you do like food manga, if you like domestic stories, slice of life, and actual good cooking recipe food manga, What Did You Eat Yesterday should be your first choice if you're looking for those very specific things. We have a Square Enix manga, really cute, sweet title that I'm following. This is the second volume of Okura's I Think Our Son Is Gay, which is, as the title suggests, is the story of a mother who has pretty strong suspicions that her oldest son is gay, and he's not out of the closet. He's not open about his sexuality. It's also not inherently, obvious as to whether he is gay or bisexual or any of the specifics to that. I don't think he even knows that, just because, he's a teenager and might still be going through some stuff, especially because he does have, he has this worry of coming out to his family, and just her really sweet, lovely acceptance from afar of her son, and both of her sons, her older and younger son. The younger brother is also, like, he knows. It's not really, like, this guy, who is gay, or who is very highly likely gay, he's certainly not hiding it well. He's pretty obvious if you know what to look for. He's not really good at keeping secrets, and so his mother and his brother know he's working through this and probably is gay or some shade of queer, and they're happy to, accept him and let him come to terms with it himself, and hopefully in the future he would trust them enough to come out to them, to which they would support him. It's really sweet, really lovely. Highly recommend it. This is just overwhelmingly a really wonderful little title. Okura you may be familiar with if you've read That Blue Sky Feeling, which was their previous work available in English. That had art from another artist, but I believe Okura does this series entirely and is a gay man himself. It's really cute and really sweet. And just a really wonderful portrayal of kind of allyship and being a good and accepting family member, parent, person, right? It's just super duper good. Another one of Square Enix's titles that I just have fallen in love with, and every time there's a new volume, I kind of clamor to get it. It's just adorable. Next, we have the Kodansha manga. The first is the penultimate volume, Be Still My Heart, the penultimate volume of Sweat and Soap by Kintetsu Yamada. This is a adult romance about two co-workers who have somewhat complementary features. The young woman is, she believes she suffers from an excessive sweating problem, and so she is fixated on her sweating and her smell, and as a result has developed a real love for a particular brand of soaps, and is now working at the company that makes them. And a guy who is actually on the product development team of said company and has been in charge of a lot of the products that she's a fan of, but also has a heightened sense of smell, and the two are very quickly quite attracted to each other, start dating and spending their time together, end up in a relationship, and the series is the course of their relationship. Now coming into the final volumes, we're seeing their relationship develop even more. We've had a lot of life changes over the course of their relationship. They've moved in, they've kind of commit to each other, proposals, and now preparation for a wedding, and it's just really sweet and lovely. I really enjoy this series. I think there's a lot of love for the characters. It's always really nice to see an adult romance being portrayed as such, and by that I don't inherently mean like a sexual relationship, although there's plenty of that, but more so having the maturity to communicate with the partner, to work through problems, to kind of cooperate and collaborate on choices for their lives and making decisions and evaluating their relationship and, overcoming things together. It's just really, it's so good. I also like this volume in particular, wherein our main character is she's shopping around for a wedding dress, and she's quite a busty young woman, and as someone who is also somewhat of a busty young woman, I totally understand her pain, wherein certain cuts just look too racy. You feel very much on display, and then others with certain waistlines make you just look really fat because they don't have any shape after your chest, and if you've got a large chest, then obviously that means that you look like you're wearing a tent, and then whatever else. It was that whole chapter of going through dresses. I was like, I've lived every single one of these things. Not in a wedding dress, mind you, but in just general clothing choices. It can be very hard, and Yamada Sensei continues to prove that there's just a real element of genuine understanding of people and how people think and work and feel that is sometimes lost in manga, and I cannot wait for the final volume. I'll probably cry, to be honest. I love the series so much, and I highly encourage anyone who's wanting a solid, fantastic romance series featuring adult characters and an adult romance that deals with mature problems, then then Sweat and Soap would be my first recommendation. The other ongoing Kodansha manga large trim that I got this month was volume 14 of Yoshitoki Oima's To Your Eternity. This is the creator of A Silent Voice. This recently had an anime adaptation, which I have not yet seen, but personally is my favorite of the two of her works. This continues to be a really provocative, emotionally provocative series about love and grief and human connection and kindness and family and found family, namely, and finding safety with other people or in other people. And I guess the drive to connect with people who have had things that you can't inherently understand or can't inherently experience. Our main character is an immortal being, wherein he's lived several thousands of years, several hundreds of lifetimes, and has no concept of, at the beginning, had no real concept of humanity and what makes people people. But over the course of his life thus far, he has grown close to a number of people, and because of his being immortal, he's just had to say goodbye to a lot of people and had to deal with that in a lot of ways. And in some instances, it hasn't been goodbye forever, which is really lovely and really wonderful. But there's a selfishness in that as well that gets addressed pretty clearly too. This is it's not a cut and dry situation, because there's always going to be a level of emotion. There's always going to be a level of grief for when you lose somebody, no matter how inevitable it might be, no matter how prepared you may be for it, no matter who that person might be in relation to you in the grand scheme of things. Whether it be a parent, whether it be a pet, whether it be a best friend or a partner, there's a lot of levels of having spent time with that person and then remembering that person and the value of the time you spend with people, even regardless of what you are doing at the moment. And then also how it can sometimes feel like the best thing would be if nobody ever had to say goodbye to someone. But ultimately, there are so many situations, there are so many instances wherein you have to get to that stage of acceptance with grief, with sorrow, with the breakdown of relationships as well. It's just really complicated, and I think that Oima in this series handles the human connections of her characters much more, I don't want to say empathetically, but much more supportively, or easier to support as a reader compared to A Silent Voice, because although there are some fantastic relationships and fantastic characters in A Silent Voice, I do think that ultimately I disliked it, the ending quite a bit, wherein people were forced to be friends with people despite no acknowledgement or change in behavior, just to fit a status quo, or just to like fit this message of like, well, some people are just never going to change, and you know, you can't force them, which is true, but also you don't need to then be friends with that person. This series, I think, handles a lot of those topics a lot better, and I would recommend it sheerly on that note. A Silent Voice is very, very good. It's beautiful. It has a strong message it wants to share. I personally think To Your Eternity is more successful, but it also helps that it's double the length, so there is that element as well. I highly recommend To Your Eternity. Another one that develops in directions that probably don't seem inherently obvious from the first volume, but check it out. Next we have a Viz large trim manga. This is a signature volume. Another series that I love. Another series somewhat related to Chainsaw Man, in fact. And this is volume 11 of Hell's Paradise by Yuji Kaku. This is a completed in 12 or 13 volumes series about a ninja, or assassin, I guess is probably the better title. An assassin who is having been commit to death, commit to execution, but unable to die, has been sent to a mysterious island along with other death row prisoners to retrieve this elixir of youth, and in doing so comes across various monsters. Each criminal is accompanied by an executioner, just in case they try to escape. And from there, there is a battle royale-esque style of survival game, wherein all of these criminals are trying to not only survive all of these monsters, but get back home and, you know, be pardoned. That initial, although the ultimate goal is to still retrieve an elixir of life, is to escape and return home for our main character. This series is much more about, again, teamwork and found family and community and supporting other people and the bonds you build in times of great trauma and great fear and just extreme extenuating circumstances. It again, so for those who don't know, Yuji Kaku was a assistant, I believe, for Fujimoto, as is the creator of Dan Da Dan right now. There's been a couple creators coming out of this group that have worked together for a long time. And it does have similar vibes of character writing, of relationship, of just normal people trying to survive a really terrible reality in really empathetic human ways, even if they aren't always perfect in doing so. But it is somewhat cleaner. I don't know quite how to explain it. It's maybe a bit more approachable. It won't inherently scare you away from the first chapter compared to like Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man and even Dan Da Dan, maybe. It is absolutely, I've adored this series ever since I binged all, whatever it was, 90 something chapters or 50 chapters that was available on the Manga Plus app maybe 2 years ago, 18 months ago. And when they announced the print release, I fell in love, and well, I was already in love, but I knew that I would get this because I adore it. It's fantastic, great character writing, as I said, lovely characters and protagonists, and interesting setting, and fantastically easy to follow action, really cool monster designs, and just all around something that I enjoy from start to finish. So if you haven't tried it yet, give it a shot before the anime comes out. Hell's Paradise Jigokuraku. And if you're not wanting to buy the volumes themselves, you don't want to inherently buy a whole bunch of books, invest that money, then I would encourage you to try it via your Shonen Jump subscription. It is on the Viz website, not the Shonen Jump app, because of the violence. Not allowed on there. But do try it. Give it a shot. Lastly, for the quote-unquote regular manga, we have the most recent volume of the Berserk Deluxe Edition. This is volume 9 in the faux leather-bound 3-in-1 editions of this seinen dark fantasy classic of huge popularity and fame. And that's my bookmark, so you don't want to lose that. That shall go back in there. What? How? There. Stay. I don't need to introduce Berserk. I also don't really need to explain my history with Berserk either. I've talked about it enough in previous videos. I will say I have not yet read the entirety of this 3 volumes, just because I haven't had any time. It's getting towards the end of the year. It's a really busy period, I think, for everyone, work-wise. And so I haven't had the time to sit down and read comics, unfortunately. And this one kind of ended up falling to the wayside. I was you saw the bookmark. I am reading it. I just haven't been able to sit down and read it with the veracity that I read the last 8 volumes with, or last 24 volumes, as the case is. I've really been maybe enjoying's not the right word. I've really fallen in love with how Berserk has handled a lot of its elements. So maybe for the 2 people who are new watchers, I have never read Berserk before. I've seen the previous anime adaptation. I was a series that I avoided a long time, namely because of the hype around it, but it wasn't a series that I inherently disliked or anything. I just didn't. It was low on my priority list. That is, unfortunately, until the tragic passing of Kentaro Miura, the creator. And so I decided, like the rest of the world, to read/reread Berserk as an act of grief, as an act of celebration of his life's work, and as a way to kind of experience the story that so many people had fallen in love with over the last 40 years. It's very interesting to me. I've said it before that it took till the creator's passing for a lot of people to speak about the hopeful and quite beautiful pieces of this work, of this redemption story, more so than revenge story, because unfortunately a lot of the discussion that I'd come across in regards to Berserk, and people making recommendations over the past, over a decade that I've been reading manga. More so people focused on the art, or how cool Guts was, or how great Casca is and their relationship, but not to any real, maybe to a more shallow level, like not really explaining why, just saying it was good. There's a lot of shallowness to discussion in the forums that I was in, or on the platforms that I was in, when people spoke about Berserk. There was kind of this inherent assumption, I think, that you would just know why this series was good. And as someone who has never jumped feet first into a recommendation, or into a series just on popularity, I did need something more than just, oh, well, of course it's awesome. Like, obviously it's the best thing ever. Miura's the GOAT, right? Like, this, I needed more. And again, sadly, with his death, that's what prompted people to speak about Berserk and his work with that kind of clarity, with that kind of thoughtfulness that wasn't there before. So, reading it now for the first time, I know some people say that some parts are better than others. I've kind of enjoyed equally all of the parts of Berserk that I've gotten up to, or that I've read. I will say that I think the Band of the Hawk stuff probably may have been more effective for me if I didn't know what was going to happen. Berserk is old. I didn't avoid spoilers. I knew what was going to happen. So perhaps I would have been more emotionally distraught if I didn't have the knowledge of what would happen prior. But I do also think that because of the way that the series is structured, wherein we meet Guts in his current self, recent current self, in meeting Puck, that as this jaded lone wolf warrior who's on this quest for revenge, that we inherently know what the outcome of the Band of the Hawk stuff is before we get there. We've had that glimpse into the future before going to the past, that I think that maybe structurally that could have been dealt a different way. I don't know. It's not really a criticism, but I will say that I think some people have a much more visceral reaction to the Band of the Hawk stuff. And although it is very good, it's very effective, it's very bleak, it's very well done, that has not been my favorite part of Berserk. And I've actually overwhelmingly enjoyed most everything else more since then, more than that arc. I liked a lot of what was in Band of the Hawk, and it's a testament that, of how good the series is, that, I find that to be not the weak part, but, I can definitely understand why so many people love it and have been inspired by it over the course of the history of Berserk, but I really enjoy now meeting more characters and seeing how they affect Guts as a protagonist, and having that reformation of character. That's what's most interesting to me, more than the betrayal of Griffith. I think that seeing more of current Griffith and his, like, the development of that and his relationship now, or the potential of how he feels now, having made the choices that he did, and in relation to Guts, would be very interesting. And their dynamic is very interesting, as along with Casca, that's no question. But I do think that it's really, to me, a more interesting story seeing how a person heals from great trauma, how survivors survive in the aftermath of great trauma. And we saw that happening a little bit in the Band of the Hawk stuff, with Guts connecting with Casca and Griffith, and how much that changed him and evolved him as a person and encouraged him to grow. But it was obviously kind of reverted immensely once the end of that arc happened. So it's nice to see him start on that journey again, and also have the huge positive influence in other people's lives too. Berserk is very good. I don't need to convince anyone, because everyone already knows this. It's not a series for everyone. I will not say it's the greatest comic of all time, because I do not think that it's the greatest comic of all time. It's one of the most influential, yes. I think Miura was brilliant at what he did. I think that his stories were a whole lot kinder than a lot of people gave credit to during his lifetime. And it's immensely tragic that his life was so short. But yeah, I mean, I will continue to read it. There will be 13/14 volumes. There's 41 volumes in Japanese, I think, is the final part of Berserk. But as 3-in-1, that's not quite 3 volumes. There's obviously 13 will be up to 39, and then normally 14 would be 40, 41, 42. Dark Horse has said they have plans for the final volume, and presumably these deluxe editions. We don't know what that will be or what that is, but I'm sure that fans will appreciate it nonetheless, and it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to reading the entirety of the series before too long. To the BL manga, and I have quite a few here. First is probably the sweetest, easiest to recommend, tamest, no spicy scenes, and that is Sho Harusono's Sasaki and Miyano, Volume 4. This is put out by Yen Press and has an anime coming up next month, or month after next, January. This is the story of 2 high school students, one who is a secret fudanshi, i.e. he loves BL and BL comics, and his senpai, an upperclassman, who has a big crush on this boy, and is trying to trying to learn more about this boy that he has feelings for, and engaging in his hobbies, and slowly coming to enjoy BL comics too. It's really sweet. It's really lovely. It's just adorable. I love it a lot. I really think that there's a lot of really cute things going on in this manga. I'm a big fan of this kind of sweet first love, puppy love, and if you are someone who's wanting that in a BL, this is what I would recommend. There's nothing sexual in it, as I said, but who knows, that may change. I don't think it will change, but it's just a sweet, wholesome little first love story, and I'm greatly enjoying it. So, good job, Yen Press. On the opposite spectrum, we have something that is entirely spicy. It has other stuff going on as well, but it's mostly spicy. And this is Volume 5 of Twittering Birds Never Fly by Koyonoda, one of my favorite of her series. But June, every time I give you an iota of gratitude, an iota of, I don't know, respect, you just gotta scupper it, don't you? For those who don't know, this series, what June is highly problematic. They're an imprint of DMP. They have atrocious print runs. They have just atrocious business practices. But unfortunately, some of my favorite BL titles are and have been licensed by them. And they will... It seems that they're being a lot more proactive with their manga division, namely probably because it's selling so well for them. This, for a long time, was the only one of their legacy titles, aside from Border, but that's never happening. The only one of their legacy titles that I was really hoping for either a continuation from them or a rescue license from them. They have been, as I said, more proactive with putting this in print, so we finally got Volume 4 after a super long time. Volume 5, Volume 6 is also up for pre-orders, so that should be coming over the next several months. And ultimately, Volume 7, I assume, which is the most recent in Japan, but it's still an ongoing title as well. So, the issue with this book in particular, and with the entirety of the print run of this series, it seems, is that this is the cover. This is how it's supposed to be, right? Title's correct. When we open the book, that's not right. This doesn't look correct. The entire book is printed upside down / backwards. So if you're wanting to read this book, you gotta flip it around, and then you got your comics in the correct way. June, how did you manage this? I presume, I would hope that they fix this with subsequent print runs, but for me, right now, I'm going to keep this book just because I don't trust anything that June does ever until it is in my hands and I can see it and touch it and experience it. I will not get rid of this because I do not know when replacement / second print runs for this title will be, and I can live with this kind of issue, right? It's not like it's missing pages. It's not like, there's untranslated text bubbles. It's not like there's rips through every page or anything like that. It's annoying. It should never have happened. It's severely unprofessional, but it's also fine. Like, I can read it. It's fine. Nobody really... It doesn't impact your reading experience or your collecting experience. If you're like me and you're wanting just the content, it's fine. I understand that other people are not nearly as gracious, maybe. And don't get me wrong, this is not my way of letting them off the hook. I do expect them to fix this. And I do expect that I will have to repurchase this. But again, I have zero trust in this company. So until I can get a second copy that I know will be fixed, I'm keeping this. Because ultimately, I love Koyonoda's manga more than I hate June. And I hate June a lot for a lot of different reasons. And it aggravates me that they have so many good titles upcoming in their pipeline as well that I will definitely be purchasing. I'm so conflicted. It's like with Tokyo Pop, right? It's exactly the same. It's the exact same situation wherein I do not want to reward bad behavior or bad business practices from companies, and I 100% understand why people would boycott certain publishers to the level of like Tokyo Pop and Twittering Birds. Other people who boycott publishers they don't understand business. These are not, oh, they're not putting my favorite things in print, therefore they're dumb and I will never buy any of their things, therefore creating a self-perpetuating problem. These are, oh, I don't like the fact that you exploit your workers and you steal intellectual property and you do this, that, whatever else. But I'm also not a hypocrite. So if any title that I enjoy, that I love, gets licensed in any capacity from any English publisher, even the most problematic, I will still buy it because I want to legally support releases more than I feel justified in boycotting things. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make any sense, and maybe I'm a schlub, right? I'm a schmuck, but it was really nice getting this volume. So this is probably the spiciest, which is saying a lot. Spiciest, especially in regards to our actual couple. So for those who have been waiting for this slow simmer to finally boil over, this is the volume that happens. I look forward to volume 6. Fingers crossed there's nothing too terribly wrong with that release. And just keep it moving, Juno, right? Just as long as you keep consistency and you fix your mistakes in subsequent reprints and you treat your people better, I've got no qualms with you. But just try a little bit harder. Just a little bit harder, please. Next we have the most recent volume from, I think it's the most recent volume, from Kuma Publishing, which is Faku's BL imprint. It used to be for all LGBT manga, but I think they realized that Yuri stuff is pretty accepted under the Faku imprint. BL, probably less so. So it has just kind of transitioned to be completely BL focused. This is You Are My Happiness by Bukuro Yamada, same mangaka as Melting Lover, which was their first release. This is pretty spicy, so I'm not going to flick through it. I guess it's a short story collection, but majority is, well, it's one story, which is the You Are My Happiness chunk, and then there's another like full up story as well, with different characters. I liked it. I didn't inherently know what was fully going on the first time I read it. There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of things that aren't always immediately answered, but I did like it. I've reread it since, and I think I would understand more of it. If you like spicy stuff with a bit of plot, then it's probably one to check out. It's about a guy who's just kind of a bit of a pushover, will accept work from anyone. You know, he'll take responsibility for other people's work and problems and whatever else, just to kind of feel accepted by other people, who one day, whilst he's working a job that he didn't really sign up for, he meets another young man who has devil wings and a tail, and they start a relationship, kind of. Well, they start banging on a somewhat frequent basis. It's interesting. Similarly to Melting Lover, it's not going to be for everyone. I do think this one's a bit more cohesive, namely just because a lot of the stories, or both of the stories, have a lot more time to work with. So you get to know the characters a bit more. Yeah, interesting. I liked it. And it's always curious to see what Kuma's putting out every so often. So yeah, another one for the collection. Next we have a 7 Seas BL. This is somewhat of a continuation. It's a sequel, side story, sort of, to Classmates. This is volume 4, Classmates Sora and Hara, which is focusing on the teacher character and his relationship, not wholly romantic relationship, with a new student at the school. Preface this. We know that I'm not a fan of student-teacher relationships, just generally. I think they're very creepy. I definitely am not a fan of romantic relationships, especially where romantic relationships where one of the people is a minor and then the other is not, and not a fan of age gap romance. That is the weakest, that is what this is, right? There is a implied romance between, or romantic interest between this 37-year-old teacher and a 15-year-old student, which is big yikes energy. Just big yikes. Why then did I buy this? One, I was interested in how Nakamura would handle this situation, or this premise, and I was somewhat interested just to see how this character of Hara, the teacher, would be dealt with. And I will say that although I'm absolutely not a fan of the potential romantic relationship that this series brings, and I have read this, so I am talking from my viewpoint, I do think that this is more nuanced than what could have been. For most of this, there isn't really a romantic element whatsoever between our two main characters. Okay, so basically, if you don't know anything about the Classmates universe, this teacher, he liked one of the main characters, a previous student of his, that has graduated, who is part of the main couple, right? Since his graduation, this teacher, he's like, wow, obviously I didn't have a chance with him anyway. Also, I'm a teacher. It's not suitable for me to be attracted to students. That's weird and gross. And, I can't really help how I feel, but also, I'm not actively going after students. And so at some point, in order to kind of blow off frustration, he goes to Nichon, the gay district, and ends up picking up this cute guy, and they're kissing, and then he realizes that he really only picked up this guy because he was wearing glasses, similarly to the kid that he was interested in. And he ended it there. He was like, okay, I'm going home. Just kind of left this other guy, high and dry, as it were. The following day, or in the subsequent time, they reunite, but unfortunately, this boy who he was kissing turned out to be a new student at the high school, i.e. a 15-year-old, who, to be fair, when he finds that out, he's like, holy shit, we are never talking about this, totally inappropriate, I don't date students, that's weird, It's not appropriate. I wasn't aware. I felt like, what were you doing in a bar drinking alcohol if you were 15? That's... ew. No. I will give Hara credit that he never, like, 99% of this book, he's not actively pursuing a 15-year-old. And even at the end of the book, he's not really actively pursuing a 15-year-old. The romance element, I feel like a big chunk of the story is more so focused on why Hara is the way he is, why he was attracted to this previous student, and his relationship with his own teacher, who had an inappropriate relationship with him as a student, and how that has informed his choices and his attitude, in that he's not, like, he doesn't think it's appropriate to date students, which is not, like, that's just not good. But because he fell in love with the teacher as a student, and that teacher had a relationship with him that took advantage of him as a teen, when he was still, like, formulating his own feelings, and he still, like, this old former teacher of his and the student that he had very similar, they looked very much alike, which is why I think he was attracted to him, or at least, like, wanted to get more involved in this other kid's life. It's a lot more complicated than, like, this is just a predatory teacher, and it's fine because whatever. Still not fine, but I can understand from somebody who's had that kind of messed up previous relationship wherein he was the victim, or which he might not have inherently even seen himself as a victim, but he has recognized that that was wrong. When the opportunity comes up for him to, like, get back together with this other teacher, like his former teacher, now that they're both adults and much more age appropriate for each other, and, you know, he obviously still has some feelings for him because he was his formative romance. He goes for that. Like, he wants a quote-unquote normal relationship, but his teacher, oh my god, he's the actual predator. Get that guy in jail. He is not good. Do not allow him to teach. He is predating on teens. No. But, and so I can understand how that experience has directly impacted Hara, and has thus directly impacted how he's dealt with relationships and over the course of his life. Again, not an excuse, but an explanation, and I thought that was really interesting. I think it was a more difficult way to address the character, rather than just making it, you know, Nakamura could have completely avoided the topic whatsoever and just, like, I don't know, had a quote-unquote cute age gap romance. I will say, again, that there is romance in this, mostly from our 15-year-old, who is, like, our current 15-year-old, who does now have feelings for his teacher and is, like, trying to make that obvious. And he is very often not treated like a 15-year-old because he's quite tall and gangly, and he will sneak in and, like, get drinks and, you know, not inherently act his age. Again, not an excuse, but an explanation. But he's the one who's, like, really trying to make it be known that he has feelings for this teacher. And again, teacher's like, no, I don't date students, no. And so he's also kind of trying to help this teacher now, Hara. Sora is now trying to help Hara reconnect with the former student that he had a crush on, our main character from the last series. Because he's like, well, now he's graduated, you might actually have a chance. Like, it obviously seems like he cared about you in some capacity, blah blah blah. And which is like still sketchy, but like maybe more understandably less understandable from a 15-year-old's perspective. And you know, there is kind of iffy history there, so you know, whatever. Ultimately, by the end of the book, the 15-year-old is like, no, but I'm interested in you also, and hey, if I'll date you. You just go wait till I graduate. And then, so basically, like, the ending is implying he graduates and then they're together. I'm like, that is still gross. That's still a 22-year age difference. That's a big yikes from me. But I do, so again, like, I'm not reading it for the romance. I understand people who don't want to read this because of that, who don't want to read this because they just hate Hara as a character. Like, totally understandable. That's fine. I do think that Nakamura has an interesting idea and handles this plot and this premise the best way that this premise can be handled, if that makes sense. There's absolutely no way that, like, an age gap romance where one of the characters is an actual minor will ever be acceptable, or good, personally, in my opinion. But I do think that if you're wanting more insight into the characters, not only Hara and Sora, but the main characters of Classmates as well, then it is maybe worth reading. It's interesting to see, again, how Hara kind of got to the point he is in his life, and his relationship with his teacher impacting him so immensely and causing such a, you know, messed up situation. It's rough. Like, I can't say that this is an easy read. It's not a hard read, I will say. It's not explicit. That helps. It's not going to be for everyone. It's a series that has a lot of my, like, hard no, like, X's on it. Or it's a book that has a lot of my hard no tropes and X's on it. If it wasn't a book written by Nakamura, and if it wasn't a book as part of a larger series as well, and like, you can skip this if you're just wanting to follow the main Classmate storyline. Like, this isn't essential reading, right? But I did want to try it, and if I disliked it, I could always sell it. But I did think it was interesting. It's not one that is a must-read, even for fans, but I do think it was worth reading, and I do think that Nakamura did a good job. Okay. That's my maybe controversial take on Volume 4 of Classmates. Next we have, what is this called? Bad Boys Happy Home, Volume 2 by Shuwa and Hiromasa Okujima. This is the second of a 3-volume series about two, I guess, kind of delinquents who are living together. They start the series out by fighting each. Well, the blonde keeps picking a fight with the other guy, who's living in the park, and so ultimately, Blondie asks him if he wants to live with him. And over the course of their cohabitation, the other character discovers or finds out that, you know, this kid is gay, and there's reasons that he's living in an apartment by himself rather than at home because he's a student, right? And it's sweet. It's good. I like it. Another maybe kind of inappropriate age gap. I don't know how old 7 is, to be perfectly honest. He might be 19, which it's like 2 years. That's fine. But yeah, it's good. I really like. So it's been mentioned before regarding the series, but the artist is known for shonen manga, And that really comes across. There's a lot of fighting, and there's like a lot of very passionate expressions when they're like yelling at each other or getting hyped up or whatever. I really like this series. It's fun, it's funny, it's sweet in like a kind of a quirky way. And I look forward to reading the third volume because this I will say that there's attempted sexual assault in this volume in particular, which is a big yikes. It makes sense in universe and in character, and like it makes sense. It just, there's a warning for anyone who may need it, that happens, and so maybe tread with caution. But it's not romanticized. That's always a good thing. It's displayed or portrayed as a bad thing, so don't worry about that. But yeah, Bad Boys Happy Home. I'm looking forward to the third and final volume. Finally for BL and finally for manga, I have the most recent volume, the second volume, of Birds of Shangri-La by Ranma Rosaria. This is a great, spicy story about a guy who's working, I guess, like security. Well, he's a fluffer, right? He preps sex workers, male sex workers, for their night before they take on guests. So they prep them. And so the guy that he has been assigned to, seems to be having some, well, he's very popular. He's got quite a fiery personality, if that makes sense, and quite popular. And it's just about their relationship, professional and personal relationships, the reason why this ostensibly, like, normal guy would come to this particular, like, paradise island, brothel. It's an interesting one. Zarya is fantastic at very spicy stuff. I have all of her works that have been released in English, so this one was a no-brainer, and it is one of her longer works, this and Coyote. It's good. Really like it. Was highly looking forward to this volume. We get a lot of backstory on our other main character, not the main character, but the sex worker, his past and what brought him to this line of work and what he was doing prior to this. It's very interesting, and I look forward to the next volume. It's like we have kind of a change in, well, it was expected, but also like a change in status quo, as it were, a change in their relationship. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts their relationship and the story as a whole going forwards. So yeah, check out Birds of Shangri-La if you're interested. So that's all of the manga that I got for November 2021. So much. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on any of the series that I talked about today. Lots of really great continuing series, some fun debuts, a sad ending, and not so sad. I hope everyone is being kind to each other, staying healthy, staying happy. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, and whatever else in the comment section below. I do read every single comment that I get, and I do really appreciate it if you choose to do so. As always, you can find me on social media at CollectingG, that's G-E-E, all one word. On Twitter, that's basically it. They're here. And if you are new to the channel, if you survived this incredibly long video, congrats. You are amazing. But if you enjoyed the content and you're wanting more, then feel free to subscribe. I post content on a semi-regular basis. I also host a podcast with my good friend Ray from Whimsical Pictures. Newest episode should have been up just the day, like yesterday, day before. And we are also available with the podcast on not every, but all the major podcasting platforms, including Google, Apple, and Spotify. So, check that out if you're interested in that. But yeah, I think that's everything. So, look after each other. Have a wonderful rest of the month and a wonderful holiday season as we are coming into December. I will catch you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.